everybody. Welcome to Speed Tips by Bob and Chad, episode number 102. Hopefully, you guys have all got some racing in with the way the weather's been. It hasn't been a real positive thing around here. We finally got some racing last weekend. Local racetrack, Boone Speedway raced, Mason City Speedway raced. So we got some stuff. The Friday night racetrack at Fort Dodge ran. So we got some local stuff in, but a lot of it still was rained out. We didn't get, a lot of guys still got rained out. So hope you guys, I know some of the guys in the South, boy, the weather's really been bad down there. So hopefully everything's been going good and got some things going on. So how are you today, Chad?
Good. Yeah, we got to go to the racetrack 2 weeks ago. We had the Dairyland World of Outlaw late models and modifieds at Fountain City, and we don't have a factory support rig right now, so we threw some stuff in the van and headed over there. It was good to get back to the track and see all of our customers. And rumors are we're going to get our truck back, so we're getting ready, getting the trailer ready to go to hit the road and got some big shows coming up. We got the 100 Grand at Fountain City, and USMTS will be in the area, and then we got the month of June. We'll be going to the 141 to Francis Creek and to Cedar Lake for the Masters. So it's ready to get things rolling here, and hopefully, like you said, the rain needs to go away and get some racing in.
Yeah, the forecast isn't super great this week down here, but it's not as bad as it has been other weeks. I mean, it's 20%, 30% type thing. So hopefully it'll all turn around. I mean, the forecast for this next weekend looks really good so far. So hopefully that'll all work out. But oh well, we were fortunate. We had some of the guys that did get to race. We had quite a few BHE winners, a lot of shot customers were sending stuff in today. They had won across U.S., so that was pretty cool. Some of the places that got to run, so that was exciting. And like I said, looking forward to this rain to kind of chill out a little bit. The race in Hancock Speedway tonight in Britt, the Sport Mod Special that they have every year up there, it pays $2,000 to win. So it should be a good turnout, and it looks like it should be a good night. I mean, the weather's pretty good here. We just got a little of that fog from the Canadian fires that kind of leans it to a little unclear sky. But
yeah, I kind of feel like I sat at the campfire all day.
Yeah, it wasn't super bad down here. I mean, it was just enough to notice it. Basically, it was about all. So, but anyway, that's pretty much, Taylor Cool went and took her IMCA car and raced with the USRA cars last night at Mason City and won that show, which was pretty exciting. She was leading at Boone and they had a restart and bunched the field back up. She had a pretty fair lead on Cam Reimers, and then once they bunched it up, it's just typical deal when you're out there leading, you don't know exactly which to go, and so Cam actually got by her on the last lap, ended up winning at Boone. So
hey, we launched a new part today.
Awesome.
Another clamp-on shock mount style.
Oh, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, so we made these for 1 1/4, 1.5 for the front bay bars, so you can rotate the shock 90 degrees from like our normal 221 mounts to clamp on the tube, and then the bolt goes that way, and then the shock kind of misaligns. Jason Ingalls wanted it turned so that the shock was in line with the bolt, so it would never bind up through travel. So that's a new mount there. We just debuted those today, and we debuted them 1 1/4, 1.5. We've already had people asking for 1 3/4, so we probably should have just made both right away. But
awesome.
We got those ready to go. We're working on a lot of new stuff. It's amazing the ideas that keep flowing in the front door here. So it's going to be an exciting summer once we got caught up with the build season. So now we can start working on
Sure.
stuff again and get it to the track and test it.
Good. Well, hopefully we've got some questions coming up. We don't see much right now, but hopefully we'll have some questions coming up. Oh, there we go. Got one. What's the advantages and disadvantages of running the left rear brake floater clamped to the cage versus unclamped on an IMCA modified?
So the the brake floater arm basically is a little bit more tunable, so you can change the angle of the arm by raising and lowering on the frame and raising and lowering on the floater depending on whose it is. So it's going to be a little bit less effective when it's on the arm. When you marry it to the suspension cage, then the force is going through the 4-link rod, and it's also hooked to the shock and spring in the back. So as that is clamping and indexing, it's pushing up on the car in 2 spots. It has more leverage being that far back, so it gets the car up and on the right front quicker with the brake on the cage compared to the brake floater arm. Some guys can't drive the car that way; it's just too aggressive. So the brake floater lets you tune it a little bit more than, once you marry to the cage, it is what it is. You can't really tune it. You can tune it with the upper 4-link rod, but you don't want to take angle out of the upper 4-link rod. So for tunability, I'd run the brake floater separate, and for aggressive like short tracks, I would run it on the cage. So when we first started putting it on the cage, we made the housing one piece and married it like all the time. Well, we'd get to a short track and we'd be really good, and you'd go to a big sweeping corner and you were terrible because the car would just get on the right front so hard, and then it would shove across the middle because of the momentum brake push. And it took us a little while to figure that out, and that's how we developed the combo cage, so that you can clamp it to the cage and then unhook it and go to the rod and have the best of both worlds. So you can, if you want to run it on a short track on the cage, and when you get to the bigger track, you can unhook from the cage and go to the rod. So that's kind of the gist of that whole deal.
Yeah, last year we ran it pretty much all on the cage, and for some reason, I don't know what changed this year, but we started having trouble getting the car over on the right front, or the new cars didn't seem to like that, so we had to go back to the brake floater to help get the car on the right front and stick the right front a little bit better. Matthew, how much lead should you have should have in the rear end on a USRA B mod? Well, it kind of depends on what your total number of steer is. Our total number of steer is about 2.5 inches. So, we have around 3/8 of an inch to a half an inch of lead for a real dry racetrack. When it's a little heavier, we've got a little, we take that out. And I never run trail. It just doesn't with the IMCA type tire or the USRA tire. You might, that's a little bit better tire. You could use a little trail, but I think a little lead's good. Anywhere 1/4 inch to a half an inch. Like I said, just depends on what your total amount of steer is in the car. Because what you're going to do is when you put lead in the car, you're taking some static steer out of the car. What's the part number for the 1.25 inch mount?
505 1500 for 1.5 inches, and 505 1250 for 1.25 inches.
Lance says, "Hey fellas, thanks all you guys do. We appreciate that, Lance. We have fun with this. It's I almost forgot that it was tonight, and Amy said to me this morning, she said, 'You got Bob and Chad tonight, don't you?' I'm like, 'Oh, yep, I got it. We didn't have that last week. I forgot about that.' Dave wants to know, on an A-mod, is it better to have the right rear shock straight up and down, or the upper mount angled in a bit? I believe having the shock angled in a little bit definitely a plus. I always like to see that thing angled in at least 10 degrees. Just the way the car, because what you want to have, especially on the right rear, when the right rear kind of rolls under the car, you don't want to get it so that it's not. And if you started straight up and down, then it would actually be out at the top under severe chassis roll. So that wouldn't give you the effect of the support that you probably would like to have. So if you start with a 10-degree angle in, that's a pretty good angle, and then the shock's always working into the shock. It's never trying to work against itself. Justin, IMCA Sport Mod is changing the right side bar on the rear end more or less aggressive than changing it on the chassis side. I can understand moving it on either side affects the overall angle. If you move it on the rear end side, it's definitely about twice as effective as if you move it on the frame side. So if you move it on the frame side, you can actually gain more angle, or you take a lot more angle out of it. I've actually found that it seems to the car, when it gets really dry slick, seems to like moving it up there on the rear end. And then a lot of times I'll leave it, like we actually go what we call on our cars hole 4, which is what we usually run with the that's a standard setup, and that gives you about 7 or 8 degrees of angle. And then when it gets real slick, we move it up on the rear end itself. Uh, Barry and Steve is watching. Awesome, Steve. Lance, I sent Chad a cool video of my right front shock movement. A GoPro can be your best friend when you're testing.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that link, but I couldn't get it to play, Lance. So I don't know if you need to resend it or maybe you need to email it or something. I don't know. I tried to watch it today at lunch and it wouldn't load for me, or maybe I'm too impatient and needed to load more, but I'll try again tonight when I get to the couch.
David says, I have a Midwest modified 360 pull bar. How often should I change the pucks, and what are the different colors? So I'm running a USRA mod on a dry slick racetrack. Do you know what that pull bar is that he's talking about?
Well, I assume you mean Weir's Machine 360. Um, the D the DW is confusing. I assume you mean the closed 7-puck, but maybe elaborate a little bit more on what bar you actually have for sure. If it's the 7-puck, we're getting about 20 nights, 15, 20 nights on that, depending on how aggressive the track is. The bigger puck bars, we're getting the IMCA cars can go 40 or 50 nights on the bigger puck. Um, so it kind of just depends on the material in the bar, how many nights you get on it.
Cole wants to know, what does a tight helix spring do different than a standard coil spring? Well, it depends on the amount of travel. I mean, if you're only getting about 2 inches of travel, it doesn't do anything different, other than the fact it just weighs a little bit more. If you get more travel than that, then it becomes progressive and actually loads, tries to load the tire more and give the right rear more side bite if you have a lot more movement. But from what we've tested and what we've done on the spring dyno, we really can't see a lot of difference until you get a massive amount of movement. And most of the time, the right rears nowadays don't move much over 2 inches. It seems like if we get more than 2 inches, the car is just laying over there and not wanting to do anything. But like if you are getting a lot of movement, that definitely can help. Um, you know, I know there's some guys out there that are running it really fast. I've not had great response, but it's one of those deals where some guys love it and some guys hate it. So it's kind of a driver preference deal. Joey, I have a GRT with 21 BHE updates and is tight in the corner and wants to drive up the racetrack. So I'm going to assume, Joey, that you mean when you get back on the throttle, it wants to drive up the racetrack. You need to put more angle in your right rear trailing arm bar and get it so that the right rear is a little bit more aggressive. And that would be my biggest thing. I would put more angle on my right rear lower trailing arm so that the car gets more steer in it. And because that's what it's wanting is more steer. Um, Less bite, but I hate to take bite out of it. I'd rather put bite in the other side. Joshua, what effect can you see with 8 to 10 inches of J-bar split versus 5 to 7? I actually think that when you get to the point where you get so much J-bar split, I think it overloads the right rear tire and actually makes that tire erratic. And it just doesn't want to, well, what should I say? It actually can cause the tire to lose grip because it's loading it so much. What's your opinion, Chad?
Yeah, I would say it's that. I don't know how. Again, I don't know how you say it, but it's like the if you get too much angle and too much motion, whether it's spring table or J bar angle, and you get a lot of motion and you overpower the spring rate, then the car just skates, like you said, loses traction. So you need to balance that out. That's why if you see a guy running 8 or 10 inches of J bar angle, he's probably got a pretty stiff right rear in that thing, and he's got a
Yeah.
little bit different balance than what you have. It's just like any other change. When you see something you want to try it, you have to think of what the secondary effect or the opposite reaction is going to be when you put all that add that J bar angle and make that roll, and or lowering the spring table and making that roll. The spring can only take so much before it's just overloaded and you basically slide. So again, it's a balancing act. There's guys winning with 8 or 9 inches, and there's guys winning with 4. So it's about the balance and what the driver wants to feel in the seat.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. And it kind of depends on the tire that you're running too. Let's see. James, suggestions on an IMCA sport mod, trailing arm links. What will a longer trailing arm do compared to a shorter one? Well, anytime you lengthen the trailing arm, it'll slow the motion down. So it's not as quick. Like I think Wasota rules are 15 inches is the shortest maximum, and you run 17 to 15 or something like that. IMCA is 16 inches center to center. Um, what we actually run is a 16-inch right rear and a 17-inch left rear. Um, I like that because I can run more angle in that left rear trailing arm and get more straightaway speed. I feel that it gets it, but it's not going to hook it so hard in the middle of the corner and cause the car to be loose, or I mean, and tight. I mean, and that's just my own opinion. I'm not saying it does that or doesn't do that, but that's what we've done, and it seems to work pretty good. So, like I said, our stuff is a 17-inch left rear and a 16-inch right rear. Uh, see, Aaron, IMCA AMOD. What is it going to do if I move my left side 4 bars back 1 inch? In the back holes on the frame bracket, obviously I know it's lengthening the wheelbase, but what's the difference from the forward holes to the back holes, leaving bar lengths the same? Um, Basically, just changing your wheelbase. What would you say, Chad?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of guys are doing that so that they can get more dropout and achieve the same steer location. So, as we talk all the time about, that balancing act of, guys want to run zero index or they want to get a mile dropout, and get the attitude and get the blade up in the air and all that. Well, you need to focus on that steer location too and not oversteering. So some guys will find that sweet spot of how much roll steer they want to have, and then but they want to have more dropout to get the drive angle in the 4 link rods and get the blade in the air. So they'll trail that left rear back, so they don't oversteer in the middle of the corner, which it's going to make the car drive in tighter. So again, there's that opposite reaction. So you're doing one thing to offset the middle of the corner, but you're going to kill the initial entry. So you just kind of got to weigh out your options there. I mean, if the car doesn't ever fall, like most of them now are at attitude all the way around. So if you're not getting that drastic wheelbase change, through the transition from the very initial corner to the middle of the corner, then you probably don't need to worry about how it drives into the corner. So there's a lot of things to think about there on that left rear balancing act, when you're trying to get a ton of dropout and a ton of bar angle, but achieve the same steer.
Let's see, Dave, Chad, do you have a rear mount that I can? Hang on a second, I gotta move my mouse up.
That sucks right in the middle of it, don't it?
Yeah, Chad, do you have a rear mount that I can angle my shock in a bit instead of straight up? Your mounts I have now would need to be rotated 360 degrees or
180.
180 degrees for the shock heim to work.
Yeah, so we're working on a new mount right now. Like I said, we're working on a lot of new stuff. So we are going to have a clamp on upper right rear mount that's going to have 3 locations in it, so you can move the shock inboard and outboard to increase or decrease your angle there. So that's coming in the next month, I would say.
Okay, Chris, what are some of the things someone could do to get the car on the right rear more in the slick IMCA Sport Mode? Well, you almost need, I mean, it's the old school of thought. You almost need a little bit stiffer spring so that when the car does roll, it loads the tire more. And the old way of doing it is, putting some static weight up there, closer to that right rear works pretty good. Softer spring on the right front's going to get the car on the right rear a little bit better in a slick type condition. That would be my 2 suggestions. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's probably a good spot to go to. Again, spring table, spring height. Once you get the motion, though, just like you said, you can't, if you do things to mechanically make roll and you don't increase the device that holds the car up, the spring, you're going to overpower it. So, shorter spring, chunk of lead, spring table, all that stuff is going to get the car on the right rear and the right front, like you said. But then you're going to want to automatically think about increasing rate when you increase roll.
Yeah, most definitely. Like I said, and especially if you go to a shorter spring, you definitely will, because it's going to increase the roll relatively significant. So you're going to need to, like I said, put a little stiffer spring in that situation so that it loads the tire and you don't lose the effect of the roll. What does moving the left rear lower trailing arm down on the rear end mount on a stock car? What does moving the left rear lower trailing arm down on the rear end mount on the stock car? Well, I mean, anytime you get more angle in that left rear trailing arm, it's going to give you more traction. So since you can't, like on an IMCA type car, you can't alter the frame mount, and the only thing you can really alter is the rear end mounts. So, you got to have that. We run ours as low as the legal limit is, so that we have as much angle in that left rear lower as we possibly can. So that will give you more traction up off. Okay, Joey, I am on the top hole on my right rear and it still drives up on the throttle. Seems I need a different bracket on my chassis. Do you sell 2-link brackets? Well, yeah, I mean, we sell them. Chad's got them. So we sell Chad's is what we actually do.
I'm trying to figure out if he means the chassis.
Yeah, I need a different bracket on my chassis. Do you sell two-link mounts? We have like the ones that we use that we put on the two-link cars. I don't know if they would actually fit everything that you would need them to be, but we do have some brackets that are made for our cars that would work pretty good with, and they've got, I don't know how many holes is in the left side. Right side doesn't have quite as many holes, but that right rear bracket, if you're once again you're in the top hole and still drives up on the throttle. Hmm.
He says it's a Phillips A mod, so he's got Phillips's plates on there.
Okay.
Or that's the brackets, but he's running two link. I mean, you could always drill a hole. Could always drill a hole if there's, if there's material above it, and you can take the plates off, bolt them together. If they're bolt-in plates, bolt them together, and then mark a new hole and drill a new hole. Just drill both plates, have both plates bolted together out of the car, top and bottom, so they're lined up perfectly, and then drill you a couple new holes in there. That'd be the cheapest way to do it. If there's meat, if there's material there to do it.
There should be. I mean, there should be some room there. I think there's room to do at least one more hole, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because the 4-link plates, you never run the kind of angle in a 4-link car as you do in a 2-link car, right? I mean, the bolt-in plates are different. So you have to either engineer that yourself or get them from somebody that has them.
Awesome. Bob, my Camaro hobby stock that we've been talking about the last few chats is still crazy tight. 800 left front, 900 right front, 225 left rear, 200 right rear, 53% left, 52 rear, and 110 pounds of bite. I called and talked to some of your guys, and they said suck the left front in and try a 950 if needed. Did both of those still can't get in having to let out of the 3-link before everyone else is getting into rotates? I mean, I think to me, what I would probably try to do is get some more rear steer in the car, so that it helps turn in a little bit better. Sucking the left front in, I mean, that definitely can help. I don't know. I would probably go. I don't know if I would go with the 950 if you're having that problem. I think I'd still try the 800, but I think you need to put some trail in that car. See if you can't adjust your rear end so that there's a little bit of steer in the rear end so that the car rotates a little bit better getting in. So in other words, if you measured your wheelbase, that the right side would be longer than the left side.
Yeah, maybe instead of putting a 950 in the left front, just swap the front, put the 900 in the left front, and put the 800 in the right front.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a possibility. I mean, that's definitely what I would think of. What is the 225 left rear, 200 right rear? I'd actually swap those rear springs around. Put that 225 in the right rear and put the 200 in the left rear. Run a little stiffer left rear, little stiffer right rear spring to help get the car on the right rear so that it steers the car a little bit better, maybe. Dave, awesome. Can't wait for your information, Bob. My car has been great since you guys did my shocks and set my car up. And Brandon and Braden have helped tons at Boone. Can't thank you guys enough. Well, that's good. Glad to hear that. I appreciate those guys because they're on their own time. They're doing it, because they want to help our customers. And Both of those guys are great guys, and they're very helpful with the customers. And those guys do an awesome job. All my guys do. I can't complain. I had a guy from Canada down here, and he was complimenting the staff, and I said, these guys do an awesome job. I can't complain at all. And they're easy to get along with, and it's been good. Joy says, yeah, I have Phillips AMOD brackets. Yeah, I think just redrilling another hole up a little higher would be the thing to do. Travis, what will lengthening the left rear chain do on an IMCA Sport Mod? Car is tight on corner entry and loose on corner exit currently. Um, if you tighten it, it's going to probably free it up a little bit getting into the corner. I don't know if it's going to restrict a little bit of overall drop coming off the corner. So you're going to, it's going to affect the angle of your trailing arm if you shorten that up. But, you're going to take some steer out of it. So I, I don't, I don't know. I would probably look at some of my other options. Like I said, putting a little bit more steer would help the car be better getting in, but then of course it's going to make it a little bit freer getting off. So, um, I would try the chain, and it's worth a try. IMCA modified. Can having too stiff of a left rear spring cause the front end to push in the center of the corner? Um, Well, yeah, in reality it would. I mean, because when you get a real stiff spring, it's going to load that tire. The old stiffer spring gets the weight. So, I mean, anytime you have a stiffer left rear, it's not going to have as much steer, and so it's not going to hike up as much, and so you're not going to get that dynamic steer that you might get with a softer, more preload spring. So I would say definitely when you throttle it up, it's going to be tight in the middle of the corner. Joshua, what you ideally percentages try to achieve for your IMCA hobby stocks? Well, I mean, as a rule of thumb, I mean, we still like to see if we could, have that 54% left side weight, 53 to 54% left side weight would be the best. Um, Rear percentage is always a good thing, as much as you can get without getting too far overweight. And then diagonal is going to be up to the driver. I mean, the more left rear bite you put in the car, it's going to be a little freer getting in, a little tighter getting off. It's just going to be kind of where the driver gets back on the throttle and how he accelerates it. Um, those would be my suggestions. Mike, I have a Harris IMCA Sport Mod that I'm having issues getting it to come up on the bars left rear. Didn't seem to want to hike up. Any suggestions? Um, I'd make sure that, my chain's not too tight, because that's going to restrict hike. If my chain's too tight, I'm not going to get as much movement there. Shock absorber kind of depends on what you have for a shock absorber. I mean, some of those cars we've had to get fairly aggressive with the left rear shock, a little bit more gas pressure to help get them up. But I would make sure you don't have anything binding, because unless the chain's restricting it, I mean, the car should get up on the left rear unless something in the rear is binding. Jared says he has a half-inch of trail in the right rear. What was Jared's?
That was the Camaro.
Oh,
Super
yeah.
tight Camaro.
he's already got a half an inch of trail or 3/8 of an inch of trail in the right rear. I would try stiffening. I'd switch those two rear springs around. I think that might be a big help. Measurement for a stock Chevelle lower control arm. Took a hit in the left front wheel over the weekend and want to check to make sure it's not bent. Chad, on my slider, I have both OD cups so I can have the bearing on the top. Can I switch the top cup to the ID cup and get more clearance on my trailing arms? Also, the bottom thread on both rear sliders are dinged up from rocks. Can you possibly make a thread chaser to clean these threads up on them? I can answer the first one. The A-frame is when you lay it so that it's flat on your bench and you measure up to where the ball joint is. It needs to be 5¼ inches from the top of the bench to the bottom of the A-frame, right where the ball joint is.
Yeah, on the slider cup stuff, I don't know. I'm just trying to read through here. Maybe you need to flip it over. I don't know if you're running the shaft down and the body up. If you flip it over, run body down, that gets you more trailing arm clearance. Going from we don't have the ID cup, the old ID cups anymore. Everything for the sliders is all OD cups. So, and really the OD change on that versus the spring is only 1/8 of an inch. You're not going to gain much room there. As far as a thread chaser, you can use a standard 60-degree V thread file and clean it up. Otherwise, you can get 1.5 inches. I don't know if you have a full coarse or a fine thread, but they make dies to chase them. I guess that's one thing we probably could put in our book and offer is a thread chasing die for cleaning them threads up. I'll make a note about it. But yeah, them things clean up fairly easy just with a file. Maybe we should make a snap-on guard to go over them like you make for the shocks. Don't you have a snap-on body protector?
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like that. We could probably do that for the bodies too. But the clearance issue, I don't know if you can move something around, flip it over, space the bar differently. Maybe look at your bar toe. Maybe something's wrong there. But generally, there shouldn't be any issues with the slider hitting the trailing arm. So I'd look at what you got going on there. There's a couple different ways you can move that away from it.
Randy, 2000 GRT by BHE USRA mod. How long should the drive shaft be? It's different from my 2012. Well, Randall, I hate to tell you, I don't know that number off the top of my head. I would highly recommend calling the shop tomorrow, and Austin's usually the one that answers the phone. Either him or Brandon can give you that measurement. I just don't know it off the top of my head. Jared, what's the reason theory for going lighter versus stiffer? Other people in my class tell me to run 1,000-pound right front and 1,100-pound right front and 1,000-pound left front and 80 pounds of bite, 53% left and 50%. I don't know what to believe, how to believe them. Well, it kind of depends. Once again, it's another driver deal. Some guys like softer springs, like the front end to move around a little bit more. Some guys don't, and it kind of depends. I know there's some guys that are running some of that stiff stuff. It just all depends on, like I said, it kind of depends on how you like the car to drive.
Roll centers too. There's a lot of variables, right? Like anything, whether it's the hobby stock, the street stock, it doesn't matter whose it is. If you're comparing car A to car B and car A's roll center is 3 inches different than car B, it's not even going to be close to the same springs. So
Right.
you have to do what you need to win races and not necessarily if you don't have a similar car in the garage area, don't even go and talk to them people, because you aren't comparing apples to apples. It's gotten so competitive that if you do something that a car is doing that the roll center is slightly different, and it could be a 50-pound change in the spring, you're going to be out to lunch. So you really, when we say stay in your own notebook and do what your seat is telling you to do, I honestly believe that you need to focus on what your butt's telling you to do there in that situation. And we gave you a couple options there.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Because if you've got chassis XYZ and the other guy's got chassis YXZ and they're different, the springs are not going to be the same. By tight, I'm talking corner entry. As you say, if you tighten, you'll be tight everywhere. Well, I mean, softer springs are going to let the car turn in a little better. I mean, that's just kind of a normal thing. Just get some more travel in that front end. You can try lowering the front end. That definitely is not such a bad idea. That helps the front end stick a little bit better.
Also,
Try
by
and get
the swap in the left or the rears also is going to have the softer left rear spring is going to be pre-wound more, so it's going to help that wedge work on entry also. So, not to tell you to do the kitchen sink, but I think we gave you the kitchen sink there.
pretty much. And I don't know if you can run wheel spacers legally, but I would try a different offset. Stick the right rear tire out a little bit more, half-inch more. That's definitely something that can help. But I think changing those rear springs is you'll notice more difference there than what you think. IMCA modified, trying to get more drive off with right rear spring adjustment. Better to take load out of the stiffer spring or go to a softer spring at the same load? I myself would probably take a load out of the spring, but I'm still kind of a believer in having a little stiffer right rear spring just because it gets you so much side bite getting in and through the middle. The stiffer spring can make the car a little free off the corner, but usually you're going to gain so much in and through the middle that you're not going to notice your mile per hour is going to be going so much better that it just definitely, I just like it better. And plus, then too soft a spring gets the car to flop over on the right rear, and it lays there and it gets stagnant and doesn't want to go anywhere. Because you still got to get the bar angle in the right rear to get traction off the corner. What is your guys' thoughts on the IMCA mufflers? Do they help build torque on a 602 motor in the IMCA Sport Mod at all, or would a guy be better off with just turn downs? I don't know a lot about the mufflers. We always run turn downs, and part of the thing I like about the turn downs is it keeps heat off your rear tires and off your rear shocks. So that's a big deal. By the way, I appreciate your help. Austin and Brandon have both been awesome to work with since day one. We bought our GRT by BHE. Scaled during the Frostbusters, and they helped improve our program immensely. Well, glad to know, Logan. I appreciate that. That's always good to hear. Like I said, I'm pretty proud of the group that we have there at BHE. We've got a pretty awesome group of guys. Schaefer, where's a good point for an AMOD pull bar? It's a Weir's pull bar with the pull bar purple biscuits. What is your suggestions for length? I'm at 26 inches long. Well, I mean, 26 is not bad. I mean, we run 28. I don't know if 2 inches is going to be a night and day difference. I like the longer one just because I think it's a little slower to react. Chad's going to have to give you more information on the pull bar.
Yeah, the purple biscuit's pretty good. You know, the length, like Bob said, 28 and 30 is more standard. So with that shorter arm, you'll have more instant traction, but you might lose it down the straightaway. So you probably have to balance out your angle a little bit, you know, between that 14 to 16 degrees, and then left to right, probably start a little bit left, you know, depending on where you are, but should be pretty tunable. More angle is more instant traction, less longevity, and left is more traction. Um, so I would tune accordingly, but I'd like a little more length, like Bob said.
Um, Mike, Bob, I'm running a 9.2, so I shock on the left rear and have rear's chain limiter in the third length from the top of the chain. Well, it all depends on what the length of the chain is. I mean, the 9.2 shock, just kind of depends on the driver. I mean, if the car's doing its job and everything's rolling like it should be, I believe a 9.2 shock's definitely going to have a lot more traction than something that's a whole lot stiffer. But it also depends on, some guys aren't real good at trail braking, so we have to make something that's a lot stiffer on compression so that the car doesn't fall down. And that can happen. I mean, if the car falls down getting into the corner, that can make the car go tight. That's something that some of these guys are having tight problems in. I never thought about that, but if the car drops too fast getting into the corner, that's definitely going to cause a tight situation. It's going to take the steer out of it right away, and it's going to take the load off the right front, so the right front's not going to want to stick, and the car's just not going to want to turn. Jared, do you have lower blocks on the rear end? That's the biggest change on a Camaro. I've seen people put the wrong side and out to lunch. Well, that's a good point, Tim. I never thought about that. Um, Probably running, yeah, with the leaf. If you've got leaf springs, I mean, I would think that's probably true. Danny says, "Hi, Bob and Chad." Um, Tim, yes, we can run blocks. I've been using them to set bite and leaving the front alone. Once ride heights are set and geometry is set, yes, I put 4-inch studs on the car, so I have eight half-inch spacers. Been leaving the three off on both rears and putting 1-inch spacer on the right rear and moving it to the left rear on main events. We'll give those things a try, and the 800 to 900 pound spring ballpark for a 3,000 pound or 3,300 pound Camaro. Well, the Camaro's got, that's got the good A-frames on it, so you might end up having to be at 1,000 and a 900, just because of the weight of the car. But once again, the softer you can run the front end, I still believe it's got a better chance of sticking. Sometimes the guys get too stiff, and then what can actually happen is they'll scotch the tire and just breaks traction. Jared, 1-inch block on the left rear, 1.5 on the right rear, which gives you 110 pounds. Awesome. Well, that's good information. Justin, what's a good starting point on our rear springs for a 3-link car. Kind of depends on how much the car weighs, but if you're 2,500 to 2,650, our common go-to is a 225 right rear and a 150 left rear. That seems to be a pretty good combination. I know some guys run a 125, uh, but it kind of just depends on the driver and how they like that left rear to load and unload. But 125 to 150 on the left rear and a 225 on the right rear seems to be a pretty good spot.
You missed jig.
Oh, are swivel mounts designed for only shocks, or can they be used for spring sliders as well on the cage?
Yeah, we like to use the swivel mounts everywhere because they're the strongest mounts. So definitely can be used on shocks or spring sliders on the cages, front or back.
Question of the century. At what point do you call a rod end / hind joint bad or good? Some non-Teflons are tight, some non-Teflons are loose. Opinions. What's your opinion on that, Chad?
Well, I'm kind of anti Teflon. We have that rod end that we use in the school that the guy ran, I think, 2 nights on his J bar on a modified. And the problem with the Teflon is it's really good. It's a good lubricator. If you're running a car that doesn't get washed, doesn't get any kind of wet, you don't spray any kind of lube on them. So, in my opinion, it's not right for dirt racing because everything's going to get wet at some point. You wash the car, you're going to get moisture in the Teflon. Then the Teflon's going to get angry with the dirt, and then it's going to fall out of the heim. And then the heim is really loose. And the looser the heim, the more bound up it is. So, if you picture that bearing surface going from all the way around to just being on one single point, it's going to bind. So, in my opinion, I'm a good chrome moly, no Teflon. Good lube like a Schaefer's Molly spray dry lube, and just clean that stuff. You're better off cleaning it without the Teflon because then you can pressure wash, spray it, blow that stuff out, and then spray the lube in there. Every night. Sometimes you got to do it after every race, depending on your track conditions. So many times it's overlooked, Bob. I don't know how many times the first thing you do is you go up and you push a car down and you can tell if the heim maintenance is good or bad. So definitely the question of the century and definitely the most overlooked maintenance part on the car, I would say.
Well, if there's a heim binding, it's just like the guy that said that the car wouldn't get up on the left rear. If there's heims binding back there, it won't move. Kevin, what's a good starting point, bar length, and angle going from a 4-bar to a 3-link? Normally we run like our left rear. I like to run our left rear somewhere around 26 to 28 degrees static. Right rear, I like to run. I start with it, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 7 degrees, and then depending on how slick it gets, we might take a little of that out, or if it's real heavy, I might put a little more in. But either way, the left rear, like I said, dynamically, if you measure, if you take the right front spring out, jack it up underneath the seat till it hits the chain, I like to see dynamically that thing's somewhere between 40 and 45 degrees. I don't go over 45 degrees in our 3-link car because then I think it makes the car more of a pogo stick type thing. But we try to be, I try to be as close to that 45 degrees as I can dynamically. And statically, it usually works out around 26 to 28 degrees. And Slim, I forgot to bring that book home. I even had all 3 of them on my desk, and I forgot all about bringing them home again today. I'm going to have to do that during the week so I don't forget again. Front springs, hobby stock. Tell you what, if you get time tomorrow, give Braden a call at the shop. He's our hobby stock expert. I think the hobby stocks, if I'm not mistaken, are somewhere around uh, 11 1,000 pound left front and 1,100 pound right front. But write this number down: 515 292 9200 and ask to talk to Braden. He is our hobby stock guy, and he will be more than happy to help you with any other questions you might have too. Tim, Bob, what's your opinion on setting toe on a turn stub modified? I set the toe the same way as if the stub wasn't turned. I don't, I don't see where that would make any difference. Jared, thanks for all the help, Bob and Chad. We will give those things a try and hope to be running Saturday. Awesome. Bobby's watching. Awesome. Uh, how much? Slim wants to know how much pinion angle on a hobby stock. Um, we usually run between 7 and 5 degrees, or 5 to 7 degrees is what we usually run in all our stuff. Uh, Jig said, thanks a lot. Listening to your answers on starting point for rear springs on a B mod, you said 125 to 150. If you start with a 125, when do you decide to head to the 150? Well, if the point, if it's just what happens is, of course, the lighter spring is going to wear out quicker. But if you feel that the car kind of gets up too quick and then goes away, that's going to kind of tell you might want to go to the stiffer spring, because the stiffer spring will help the traction last a little bit longer. Softer spring helps it get the bar angle up longer. Same thing if you're not a real good trail breaker, the stiffer left rear is going to help the car be a little bit more controllable getting into the corner. So it just kind of depends on what action you want it to be. It's like I said, it's just another driver deal. It all depends on how fast you want something to happen or how slow you want it to happen. Okay. Jared, yes, Braden's very helpful and awesome to talk to. I appreciate that. Aaron, sorry, late tuning in. Can you please give me your opinion on different pull bar angles in relationship to different track conditions if you haven't already? You know, I run 15 degrees of angle on, I never change the angle. There's so many other adjustments that we can do in the car today to get it to do what we want it to do. That change in pinion angle or pull bar angle, I think just clutters the because you put more angle in it, it's going to get you off the corner a little better, but it's going to get you freer getting into the corner. I stick pretty close to that 15 degrees and I just race it. What's your thoughts, Ted?
Yeah, once you find a balance point, I would say the only reason I would be changing the angle is on if you got to a really big track. The longer the track, the flatter the bar needs to be. But for the most part, all the short tracks, once you find that happy traction spot, you could weld the bolts in the car pretty much.
Justin says, don't worry, Chad. Your staff is awesome also. Thanks for letting them spend time with us at your place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
all
was
those guys are awesome. They're great, great, great attitude group.
got a good group of people. Yeah. Sorry I missed you that day, Justin. Next time.
All right, let's see. What time have we got here? Oh, it's 8:01. All right, let's see. Today is it must be the 13th. So May 27th.
That's Memorial Day.
That's a holiday. So we'll have to skip that and come back on, I don't have my calendar set for June.
June 3rd,
Yeah, let's plan on that.
3 weeks.
Yep.
Perfect.
All righty. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate all of you chiming in. Great questions tonight. And I hope we gave you some helpful answers and be able to help you guys succeed. And hopefully the rain will stay away so you all get to race this weekend. And thanks, Chad.
Yeah, thanks everybody.